The Great Pyramid's hidden chambers. Recent scans of the last ancient wonder reveal tantalizing voids deep within its structure, spaces untouched for millennia. The desert wind, carrying grains of sand that have whispered against limestone for centuries, sweeps across the Giza Plateau. It is a sound that has witnessed empires rise and fall, a constant breath against the last remaining wonder of the ancient world. But beneath the familiar, weathered silhouette of the Great Pyramid of Giza, a silence of a different kind prevails. It is the profound quiet of sealed space, of chambers closed off, since the age of its construction. For all its millennia of scrutiny, from the caliphs of Baghdad to the archaeologists of the modern age, the pyramid has guarded its final secrets with an almost sentient obstinacy. The question is no longer just how it was built, but what precisely its builders sealed inside. Recent technology has begun to pull back the veil, not with chisels and dynamite, but with silent, penetrating particles from space, revealing that the heart of the pyramid may still hold rooms we have never seen. The mainstream anchor of this mystery is, of course, the pyramid itself. Constructed during the reign of the 4th dynasty pharaoh Khufu, around 2580 to 560 BCE. It stands as the most monumental and precise stone building ever created by human hands. Its dimensions, its alignment to true north with minute accuracy, and the mind-boggling logistics of its construction from an estimated 2-3 million blocks are the foundations of its all. The known interior, the descending and ascending passages, the grand gallery, the so-called king's and queen's chambers, has been mapped and remapped. Yet these spaces feel oddly incomplete. The king's chamber contains a massive, empty granite sarcophagus, found without a lid or any royal remains. The queen's chamber, a misnomer from later Arab explorers, has no clear purpose at all. This sense of architectural anticlimax has fueled speculation for generations. Were these merely decoys or anterooms to something greater? This is where modern science has interjected with breathtaking findings. In 2017, an international team of scientists under the ambit of the Scan Pyramids project announced the discovery of a significant void. They were using a technique called muon tomography. Muons are elementary particles created when cosmic rays collide with Earth's atmosphere. They rain down upon us constantly, passing harmlessly through matter, much like X-rays. But dense stone absorbs more of them. By placing sensitive muon detectors inside the pyramid, scientists could create a density map, revealing where muons pass through, indicating empty space. The scan revealed a cavernous void, at least 30 meters long, located directly above the Grand Gallery. They named it, with deliberate neutrality, the Big Void. Its dimensions are comparable to the Grand Gallery itself, and it sits at a similar, carefully aligned height within the pyramid's core. This was not a construction gap or a settling chamber. Its scale and placement suggest deliberate, architecturally significant intent. The discovery sent ripples through the fields of Egyptology and archaeology. It was a stark reminder that for all our assumed knowledge, the pyramid could still hold physical secrets of immense scale. The void has not been accessed. No camera or probe has peered inside. It remains a blank space on the map, a tantalizing "Here be dragons" notation in the very center of the world's most studied ancient monument. The debate immediately turned to its purpose. Was it a relieving chamber, designed to distribute the unimaginable weight of the masonry above the Grand Gallery and prevent its collapse? This is a leading, pragmatic theory. Yet the Grand Gallery itself is a masterpiece of weight distribution architecture. Scholars still debate whether an additional chamber of such size was structurally necessary, or if it served another, more ritualistic function. Alongside this major discovery, another, lesser-known anomaly persists. For years, a fringe but persistent theory bolstered by some initial radar scans, has suggested the existence of hidden cavities behind the intricate, chevron-patterned stone slabs of the north face of the pyramid. These slabs, unique in Egyptian architecture, form a kind of gabled facade over the original entrance. Some researchers have proposed they are not merely decorative, but act as a cleverly disguised sealing mechanism for a passage or niche. Ground-penetrating radar hints at discontinuities behind this masonry. It's a curious, fringe-adjacent detail that has never been conclusively proven or disproven, often overshadowed by the grandeur of the big void, but it speaks to the possibility that the pyramid's secrets are layered, both monumentally large and cunningly concealed in plain sight. The narrative of hidden chambers is not new. In the 9th century, the Abbasid Caliph al-Ma'mun tunneled into the pyramid, driven by tales of hidden knowledge and treasure. His men, hacking through the limestone, famously broke into the ascending passage purely by chance, the sound of a falling stone alerting them to a hollow space behind. They found only the empty chambers known today. Al-Ma'mun, legend says, was so disappointed he had gold brought from his treasury and secretly planted in the pyramid to be discovered, saving face. This ancient story underscores a timeless human drive, the belief that the pyramid's true prize remains just out of reach. The Muon scans have vindicated that instinct on a scientific level. The pyramid is hiding something. So, what could lie within the big void? The sober archaeological expectation is emptiness, a structural feature, an unfinished chamber, or perhaps a cache of tools left by the builders, a snapshot of the construction process frozen in time. But the human imagination, and indeed some serious researchers, cannot help but wonder. Could it be the actual final resting place of Khufu, undisturbed for 4,500 years? Could it contain records, artifacts, or even architectural models from the pyramid's planning stages? The void's inaccessibility is both frustration and a preservation miracle. Any physical intrusion risks destabilizing the delicate equilibrium of stress that has held the pyramid together for ages. The ethical dilemma is profound. Does the pursuit of knowledge justify the potential damage or the violation of a sealed space the ancient builders clearly never intended to be open? This brings us to a subtle, curious loop. The technology that found the void, muon tomography, is the same principle that was first used to scan the pyramids in the 1960s by Nobel laureate Luis Alvarez. His team's equipment was less sensitive, and his results were inconclusive, but he paved the way. The recent success is a testament to decades of patient technological refinement. It also creates a fascinating parallel. Just as the ancient builders used a sophisticated, now lost understanding of engineering and astronomy, we are using a sophisticated, cutting-edge understanding of particle physics to try and meet them across the centuries. We are, in a sense, conducting a dialogue with the pyramid using the language of modern science, and it is answering with silence and space. As the sun sets over Giza, casting long shadows from the pyramids, the big void remains in absolute darkness. It is a modern mystery, superimposed upon an ancient one. It is a reminder that history is not a solved puzzle, but a living, breathing field of inquiry, where our greatest monuments can still surprise us. The sealed chamber, mentioned in every documentary and book, is no longer just a speculative myth. It is a scientific fact. Its emptiness or contents are the final, unresolved note in the symphony of Khufu's monument. And until a non-invasive method is devised to see within, or a courageous, some would say reckless, decision is made to drill a tiny camera borehole, the Great Pyramid will continue to hold its breath and its secret deep within its stone heart. The Cockno Stone's cosmic map, a Scottish slab covered in mysterious cup and ring marks, lay buried for 50 years to protect it from vandals and theories. Just a few miles from the urban sprawl of Glasgow, Scotland, in a place called Faifley, a farmer's plough in the late 19th century struck something more enduring than the region's famous hard rock. What he uncovered, or rather re-uncovered, was a massive sandstone slab, 5 meters wide and nearly as long. But it was not its size that would become its defining feature. It was its skin. Carved across its surface was one of the most extensive and intricate collections of prehistoric art in all of Europe. A dense, mesmerizing tapestry of over 90 grooved spirals, concentric circles, carved hollows known as acups, and meandering lines that seem to connect them all in a vast, silent network. This is the Kokno stone. Unlike the grand architectural mystery of the Great Pyramid's hidden voids, this mystery is etched in plain sight, a codex of symbols lying under the open sky, yet its message is just as impenetrable. Its story is not one of recent high-tech discovery, but of deliberate, modern concealment. A secret buried not by ancients, but by contemporary authorities desperate to protect it. The Kokno stone is the mainstream anchor here, a documented and undisputed example of Atlantic rock art, a style found across Britain, Ireland, and parts of Iberia. These cup and ring marks are the signature of Neolithic and early Bronze Age peoples, dating roughly from 3000 to 1500 BCE to A. They are abstract, non-representational, and ubiquitous. Archaeologists have catalogued thousands of such stones across the landscape. The Kokno stone, however, is a superlative example, a veritable masterpiece of the form. Its symbols are deep, clear, and cover the entire surface in a seemingly chaotic yet undeniably intentional design. For decades, after its 1887 documentation by the Reverend James Harvey, it became a local landmark, a curiosity for picnickers and a canvas for later generations who added their own graffiti, from initials and dates to a more perplexing addition. A pair of carved Christian crosses, likely from the early medieval period, superimposed upon the prehistoric swirl. This layering of symbols across millennia only deepened the stone's enigmatic aura. The lesser-known, curious detail of the Kokno stone's story is its second burial. By the 1960s, the stone had suffered. Industrial pollution from nearby Glasgow was pitting its surface. More damaging was the rise of casual vandalism and the increasing traffic of theorists who'd pour paint or chalk into the carvings to make them more visible for photographs, inadvertently accelerating erosion. Faced with the potential loss of this irreplaceable monument, local authorities and archaeologists made a radical decision. In 1965, after a final archaeological survey, they covered the entire stone with several feet of soil, grassing it over and erasing it from the landscape to preserve it for future, perhaps more respectful, generations. For 50 years, the Kokno stone slept beneath a suburban field, a buried library of symbols, protected by oblivion. It was only in 2015, as part of a wider heritage project, that it was carefully exhumed for a brief detailed study using modern 3D imaging technology, before being reburied once more. This act, hiding history to save it, is a profound and strange chapter in the stone's long life. What do the symbols mean? This is the central, unanswerable question. The mainstream archaeological interpretation is cautious. The prevailing theory posits a ritual or ceremonial function, perhaps related to rites of passage, ancestral veneration, or territorial marking. The cup marks, the simple hollows, are sometimes theorized to hold offerings: blood, grain, milk. The rings and grooves could represent ripples in water, or pathways for spirits. Some researchers have noted a possible astronomical connection. Certain patterns might map constellations, solar alignments, or lunar cycles. Scholars still debate whether these markings are a proto-writing system, a sacred cartography, or purely abstract art meant to induce altered states of consciousness during rituals. The truth is, without a cultural Rosetta Stone, a key that links these abstract symbols to a known language or mythos, their meaning remains locked within the minds of the people who patiently pecked them into the rock over 4,000 years ago. The re-excavation in 2015, however, brought a modern tool to bear: high-resolution laser scanning. This process created a hyper-accurate digital twin of the stone's surface, revealing details invisible to the naked eye. The scans showed not only the incredible depth and precision of the original carvings, but also the faintest of additional lines, fragmentary designs that perhaps were never finished, or were worn away by millennia of weathering. This digital record is now the primary object of study, allowing researchers to analyze the stone's grammar without risking its physical degradation. It confirmed the astonishing complexity of the layout. The design is not random. There is a syntax. The spirals often originate from a central cup mark. The grooved lines frequently connect clusters of symbols, as if charting relationships or pathways. It looks, for all the world, like a map. But a map of what? This is where the cosmic map idea, hinted at in the teaser, takes root. To the modern eye, the swirling spirals and connecting lines irresistibly evoke images of galaxies, star clusters, and celestial orbits. Could it be a representation of the night sky as seen by a Neolithic shaman? Or perhaps a cosmological diagram mapping a belief system about the journey of the soul? It's a compelling, romantic notion. Yet, archaeologists urge extreme caution. Projecting our modern space-age sensibilities onto prehistoric art is a seductive, but often misleading trap. What we see as a spiral nebula might have been, to its maker, a symbol of water, rebirth, or the coiled body of a serpent. The map might not chart the heavens, but the underworld, or the intricate social and spiritual landscape of the tribe itself. The stone's location offers another clue. It lies in a wider ritual landscape, with other cup-marked stones and burial cairns in the vicinity. It was not an isolated billboard, but likely part of a network of sacred sites. The act of carving it, the repetitive percussion of stone on stone, may have been as important as the finished product, a communal ritual act that bound the people to that specific place in the land. The crosses carved a few thousand years later underscore this. The site retained its numinous, sacred character long after the original meaning of the symbols was forgotten. New faiths recognized the stone's power, even if they could not read its original language, and sought to sanctify it anew with their own iconography. The story of the Kokno stone, therefore, is a double mystery. The first is the ancient one. What message did these Neolithic artists intend to convey across the ages? The second is a modern, ethical mystery. How do we preserve such fragile open-air enigmas in a world that threatens them with both pollution and popularity? Burying it was an act of profound humility, an admission that we were not yet worthy or not yet equipped to be its stewards. The stone now rests, a dormant puzzle beneath the grass, its digital ghost circulating among academics. It serves as a quiet counterpoint to the invasive searches within pyramids. Sometimes, the greatest respect for a mystery is to let it be, to acknowledge that some ancient codes are not meant to be cracked in our lifetime, but simply to be safeguarded so that the question itself endures. And perhaps like the sealed chamber in the pyramid, its greatest power lies in its potential, in the tantalizing, eternal possibility of an answer waiting just beneath the surface. The tomb of the first emperor's unopened secret, the massive burial mound of China's Qin, Shi Huang, hides a mercury-laced palace, its treasures guarded by a booby-trapped legend. In central China's Shaanxi province, a green, tree-covered hill rises abruptly from the flat farmland, a stark, man-made mountain in an otherwise level landscape. This is not a natural formation. This is Lashan, the eternal resting place of Qin Shi Huang, the man who forged warring states into a single unified China in 221 BCE, giving the nation its very name. His tomb mound, still unexcavated, is one of archaeology's final great frontiers, a sealed universe rumored to mirror the empire he conquered. While the famous terracotta army, discovered a mile to the east, stands as his eternal imperial guard in sprawling, open pits, the emperor's own chamber lies inviolate, a silent heart protected by more than just earth. Ancient texts speak of fantastical traps and rivers of shimmering, toxic mercury. Modern science has detected alarming levels of that very element in the soil. The central, pressing question hangs in the air, as potent as the supposed vapors within. What unimaginable wealth, artistry, and knowledge of the Qin dynasty lie preserved in that dark, poisoned palace, and at what risk do we seek to open it? The mainstream anchor here is immense and historical. Qin Shi Huang is a foundational, documented figure. His legalist reforms, standardization of script, currency, and measurements, and the initiation of the Great Wall's early foundations are well recorded by the historian Sima Qian a century after the emperor's death. It is Sima Qian who provides the most detailed and tantalizing account of the tomb's construction in his records of the Grand Historian. He describes a subterranean microcosm of the emperor's realm, a ceiling inlaid with pearls to simulate the night sky, a floor carved with a map of China, its great rivers flowing with mercury, powered by some ingenious mechanical means. He writes of palaces, towers, and priceless artifacts gathered from across the empire. And most chillingly, he speaks of automatic crossbows, rigged to fire at any intruder, set to guard the passageways. This is not fringe myth. It is a primary historical source, one that has shaped the imagination of the tomb for over 2,000 years. The scientific validation of part of this ancient text is what elevates this mystery from legend to a tangible, dangerous puzzle. Throughout the 1980s, and again in recent decades, Chinese archaeologists have conducted extensive geophysical surveys of the mound. They have confirmed the tomb complex is a vast underground city covering nearly 38 square miles. More startlingly, soil samples from the mound have consistently shown mercury concentrations up to 100 times higher than normal background levels. The pattern of this mercury pollution is not random. It appears to mirror the approximate course of major rivers in China, particularly the Yangtze and Yellow River. This extraordinary finding suggests Sima Qian's account of mercury rivers was not mere poetic fancy, but based on observable, terrifying fact. The tomb is literally toxic, a monument sealed by chemistry as much as by stone and superstition. This presents the modern world with an unparalleled ethical and technical dilemma. Excavating the terracotta army pits was a monumental challenge, resulting in the rapid fading of once vivid pigments upon exposure to air. The contents of the central tomb would be infinitely more delicate and complex. Scholars still debate whether our current conservation technology is adequate to handle what might be inside. Imagine lacquered wooden artifacts, silken banners, fragile manuscripts on bamboo slips, or organic remains, all potentially preserved in a unique, mercury-saturated environment. Opening the tomb could trigger their instantaneous destruction. Furthermore, the high mercury levels pose a severe health risk to any excavators. And then, there is the lingering, spine-tingling warning of the crossbow traps. While the mechanisms would likely have decayed, the principle underscores the tomb's design permanence as a sealed unit. It was never meant to be reopened. A lesser-known curious detail lies in the broader necropolis. While the main mound is untouched, surrounding archaeological digs have revealed a staggering wealth of ancillary pits and artifacts that hint at the tomb's grandeur. Besides the terracotta army, excavations have uncovered a pit of stone armor suits, a burial site of exotic birds and animals, pits containing terracotta acrobats and strongmen for the emperor's entertainment in the afterlife, and even a pit with bronze chariots and horses, masterpieces of metallurgy. Most intriguingly, in 2023, archaeologists announced the discovery of a large, sealed side chamber within the tomb complex perimeter walls. Preliminary scans suggest it contains a wealth of bronze ritual vessels. This chamber, still unopened, acts as a test case, a smaller mystery orbiting the great central one. What it holds could refine theories about the main tomb's contents and provide crucial practice for the conservation challenges ahead. The tomb mound itself is a monument to paranoia and power. Qin Shi Huang was obsessed with immortality, sending expeditions to find the elixir of life. His tomb, therefore, was his ultimate backup plan, a perfect, defended universe where he could rule forever. The workforce of over 700,000 conscripts who built it were, according to Sima Qian, buried alive with the secrets of its interior passages to ensure its security. This grisly tale, whether entirely factual or not, reinforces the aura of finality surrounding the site. It is not merely a grave, it is a psychic fortress. The mercury serves a dual purpose. It mimics water, a symbol of everlasting life, and its toxicity makes the tomb practically unapproachable, a final, cruel joke on any grave robbers or future archaeologists. Today, the site is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and the official policy of the Chinese government is one of proactive preservation, studying the periphery, but not disturbing the central mound. This is a stance born of respect and prudence. It acknowledges that some secrets are so vast and fragile that revealing them might constitute a loss greater than the gain of knowledge. The tomb of the first emperor thus stands as the antithesis of the ransacked pyramids of Egypt. It is a complete, intact time capsule from the dawn of imperial China. Every non-invasive scan, every soil sample, adds another layer of confirmation to the ancient texts, making the legend more real and the decision to open it more consequential. In this way, the sealed tomb of Qin Shi Huang serves as a mirror to our own technological ambition and ethical limitations. The booby-trapped legend is not just about crossbows. It is about the trap of curiosity itself. To open the tomb is to destroy its perfect preservation, to trade a sealed potential wonder for a vulnerable, documented one. The mercury in the soil is a slow, patient guardian, and the ancient historian's words are a warning that has echoed for millennia. For now, the green mound at Lashan remains a silent hill, keeping its first emperor's secrets locked in a poisonous, perfect embrace, challenging us to know when not to dig, and allowing the greatest archaeological mystery on Earth to simply be. The stone spheres of Costa Rica's perfect form, hundreds of nearly perfect stone balls, some weighing over 15 tons, were found scattered in the jungle, their makers and purpose unknown. Deep in the humid, tangled lowlands of Costa Rica's Dicas Delta in the 1930s, workers for the United Fruit Company were clearing land for banana plantations when their machetes struck something far harder than jungle vine or tree root. As they hacked back the undergrowth, an impossible shape emerged, a giant stone sphere, perfectly round, sitting silently in the earth as if it had rolled down from the sky. Further clearing revealed another and another. They weren't natural boulders. Their geometry was too precise, their surfaces too smooth. The discovery would unveil one of archaeology's most visually striking and perplexing puzzles: the Las Bolas Grandes, the great stone balls of Costa Rica. Ranging from the size of a melon to colossal orbs, over 2 meters in diameter, and weighing 16 tons, over 300 of these spheres have been documented, with countless others likely still hidden. They present a mystery, not of hidden chambers or toxic tombs, but of open, deliberate placement. Who crafted these objects of such profound simplicity and geometric perfection? And why leave them scattered across the landscape like marbles, discarded by gods? Themed. Pal. The mainstream anchor for this mystery is the archaeological culture that likely created them. The Dikis, a complex chiefdom society that flourished in the region from approximately 800 CE until the Spanish conquest in the 1500s. The spheres are almost unanimously attributed to their craftsmanship, with the peak of production estimated between 800 and 1200 CE. This places their creation firmly in the pre-Columbian era, contemporary with later Maya cities to the north. The Dikis were skilled artisans, known for their intricate goldwork and sophisticated pottery. The spheres represent the pinnacle of their lapidary, or stoneworking, technology. They are almost exclusively made of granodiorite, a hard, igneous rock abundant in the nearby Talamanca foothills. The process of creating them was one of immense patience and skill. Using smaller stones of harder material like quartzite as hammers, craftsmen would painstakingly peck and grind a rough block into a near-perfect sphere, finishing it with abrasives like sand to achieve a remarkably smooth surface. This was a communal generations-long effort for the largest examples. Yet, the why remains stubbornly opaque. Unlike the Kokno stone's symbolic carvings or the pyramid's architectural intent, the spheres offer no iconography, no inscriptions, no obvious ritual iconography. Their meaning is carried solely by their form and their placement. Many were found arranged in geometric patterns, straight lines, triangles, parallelograms, and even alignments pointing to magnetic north. Tragically, the initial discovery led to their widespread dislocation. Lured by myths of hidden gold, looters dynamited spheres. Plantation managers moved them with tractors to decorate gardens and government buildings, and collectors shipped them abroad. This vandalism destroyed forever the original archaeological context. The precise arrangements and relationships to nearby settlements, plazas, or burial sites. That was the key to decoding their purpose. We are left with the objects, but have lost the sentence they formed. This leads to the curious fringe-adjacent detail that fuels more speculative theories. Among the local Baruka people, descendants of the region's indigenous cultures, oral traditions did not initially mention the spheres. They seem to have no place in the known myths or cosmology passed down. However, after their discovery, some stories emerged or were amplified. One tale suggests they are remnants of the Tata Daios, God the Father, who used a giant blowgun whose shots turned to stone where they landed. Another, more tantalizing to outsiders, proposes they are navigational aids or markers left by a lost advanced civilization, or even extraterrestrial visitors. The sheer perfection of the spheres, especially the largest ones, seems to defy the presumed technological capabilities of a pre-metal, pre-wheel society. How did they achieve such symmetry without advanced measuring tools? How were the multi-ton spheres transported dozens of kilometers from the quarries to their final sites through dense jungle and swamp? The answer to the how is a testament to ingenious, persistent human labor. Experimental archaeology has shown that the shaping was entirely achievable with the tools and time available. As for transport, the most plausible theory involves a combination of wooden rollers, ropes, and lever systems, along with the use of log causeways through marshy areas. A staggering logistical feat that speaks to the sphere's immense social importance. Their placement was likely the final and most critical part of their function. Scholars still debate whether they were status symbols for powerful chiefs, territorial markers, astronomical observatories aligned with celestial events, or focal points for communal rituals. Their geometric arrangements might have mapped social hierarchies, represented constellations, or simply created sacred spaces of power and order in the untamed jungle. Without their original alignments, each theory remains provisional. One particularly compelling archaeological find offers a fragile clue. At the site of Finca 6, one of the few locations where spheres have been found in situ. Several large balls were discovered aligned in a straight line, leading to and flanking the entrance of a large circular mound, likely the residence of a high-status individual or a ceremonial structure. This suggests a direct link between the spheres and social or political power. They may have been symbols of authority, lineage, or cosmic legitimacy, physically anchoring a ruler's dwelling to a perceived cosmic order. The sphere's perfect form, after all, is a universal symbol of completeness, the cosmos, and unity. In a landscape of chaotic growth, these manifestations of perfect geometry would have been profoundly powerful statements of control and civilization. The mystery of the stone spheres is thus one of silent language. They are a testament to a culture that expressed its most important ideas not through pictograms or pyramids, but through abstract form and precise placement in the landscape. Their silent mathematical perfection speaks of a society deeply concerned with harmony, order, and the relationship between human community and the cosmos. Their vandalism and displacement is a cultural tragedy, akin to tearing pages from a book and scattering the words. Today, they are national symbols of Costa Rica, protected by law and UNESCO World Heritage status. Researchers continue to use ground-penetrating radar and meticulous survey work to try to find undisplaced spheres and reconstruct their original patterns. In the quiet of a Costa Rican museum garden, a lone granite sphere sits, its surface still bearing the pockmarks from ancient stone hammers. It does not hide like the Kokno stone, nor does it threaten like the first emperor's tomb. It simply is, a perfect object from an imperfectly understood world. It challenges us to understand that not all ancient messages are written or built into chambers. Some are carved into the very idea form itself, left in the open for anyone to see, yet forever just beyond the reach of definitive interpretation. They remind us that sometimes the most profound mystery is not a hidden secret, but an open question shaped in stone. The Ubaid lizard figurine's strange visage, thousands of years before the rise of Sumer, a culture created statuettes of humanoid figures with distinctly reptilian features. Long before the ziggurats of Ur pierced the Mesopotamian sky, before the Epic of Gilgamesh was first etched into clay, a different people inhabited the fertile mud between the Tigris and Euphrates. This is the Ubaid period, spanning from roughly 6,500 to 3,800 BCE. A foundational epoch that laid the agricultural, architectural, and social groundwork for what would become the world's first civilization. Summer. The Ubaid people lived in modest mud brick houses, cultivated grains, and irrigated fields. Their material culture, discovered at sites like Eridu, considered the first city, and Tel al-Ubaid, is characterized by distinctive painted pottery. But among the shards of pottery and simple tools, archaeologists have unearthed objects that sharply disrupt the narrative of these early farmers as purely pragmatic pioneers. They are terracotta figurines, mostly female, with slender, graceful bodies, exaggerated hips and shoulders, and heads that are utterly, unsettlingly alien. These faces are elongated, with pronounced, lizard-like features, slitted eyes, a flat nose that seems to merge with the brow, and a head that is often conical or ovoid. They are the Ubaid lizard figurines, and they pose a quiet, persistent question. In a culture on the cusp of history, what inspired this pervasive and profoundly strange artistic vision? Unexplained. The mainstream anchor here is the Ubaid culture itself, a well-defined archaeological horizon recognized as the direct precursor to Sumerian civilization. Its chronology, settlement patterns, and technological advancements are clearly mapped in the strata of ancient tells. The figurines are not rare, fringe finds. They are a standard, recurring artifact type across numerous Ubaid sites. They are typically found in domestic contexts, buried in the floors of houses or in graves, often cradled in the arms of the deceased. This suggests they held a recognized important role in daily and funerary life. Their consistent form across a wide geographic area and hundreds of years indicates a shared, deeply rooted cultural concept, not the whim of a single artist. They are a mainstream mystery, embedded in the very cradle of civilization. The most common interpretation among archaeologists is that these are stylized representations of deities, likely mother or fertility goddesses, with the reptilian features being a symbolic artistic convention. The emphasis on fertility, the broad hips, the frequent depiction of a mother nursing a child, who sometimes shares the same elongated head, supports this. But the choice of symbolism is what baffles. Why reptiles? One theory connects them to water and regeneration. In Mesopotamia, lizards and snakes are creatures that shed their skin, symbolizing rebirth and renewal. They are also associated with the life-giving waters of the marshes, a crucial resource. The figurines, then, might embody a goddess of fertility, water, and the cyclical nature of life, her form blending the human with the symbolic attributes of a regenerative creature. Another, more pragmatic theory suggests the elongated heads represent a cultural practice of deliberate cranial deformation, a body modification known in many ancient societies, with the slitted eyes simply being a stylistic method of depicting heavy-lidded, almond-shaped eyes in clay. However, the lesser-known, curious detail that fuels more speculative thought lies in the specific and varied postures of these figures. While many are seated or standing passively, a significant number are depicted in active, engaged poses. Some hold a suckling infant, others grasp what appears to be a ceremonial scepter or tool. Most intriguing are the figurines found in what can only be described as medical or assisting poses. One figurine from Eridu clearly has its hands on its lower abdomen. Another appears to be in a posture of childbirth. This moves them beyond generic fertility symbols and into the realm of specific ritual or shamanistic function. They could be talismans for safe childbirth, representations of midwife deities, or even objects used in healing rituals. Their presence in graves further suggests they were guides or protectors in the afterlife. Their alien visages perhaps meant to be familiar or powerful to spiritual forces beyond human understanding. This leads to a subtle but important curiosity. The Ubaid period precedes writing, so we have no texts to explain their iconography. By the time the Sumerians developed cuneiform and their own rich mythology, the Ubaid figurines and their specific style had vanished. The Sumerians worshipped anthropomorphic gods like Inanna and Enki, not overtly reptilian ones. So what happened to this tradition? Was the symbolism lost, transformed, or deliberately suppressed? Scholars still debate whether the Ubaid figurines represent a distinct, lost layer of Mesopotamian belief that was absorbed and sanitized by later Sumerian theology, or if the lizard aspect was never meant to be literal, but a visual metaphor that simply fell out of artistic fashion. The silence is profound. It is as if a foundational chapter of human spirituality was written in a language later cultures forgot how to read. The craftsmanship of the figurines themselves adds another layer. They are not crude. The modeling of the slender bodies is confident, the postures naturalistic in their own way. The faces, while strange to us, are made with intentionality. The pinched clay forming the ridge of a brow, the careful incision for the mouth and eyes. This was a conscious aesthetic. To the Ubaid people, these figures likely embodied beauty, power, and normality. Their very otherness to modern eyes is a reminder of the vast, often inscrutable, diversity of human symbolic expression. They force us to confront the fact that the minds that first built villages and mastered irrigation saw the world through a profoundly different symbolic lens. Today, these figurines reside in museum cases, often overshadowed by the dazzling gold and lapis lazuli of later Mesopotamian empires. They are small, made of baked mud, and quiet. but they are arguably more revolutionary. They represent one of humanity's earliest attempts to give tangible form to the intangible, to concepts of creation, protection, and the supernatural. Their reptilian human hybrid form might be one of the oldest examples of therianthropy, the blending of human and animal traits. In religious art, a concept that would echo through the Egyptian pantheon and beyond. In the end, the Ubaid lizard figurines are a gateway into a pre-literate worldview. They are not hiding in a tomb or a void. They were meant to be seen and handled, to be companions in life and death. Their mystery is not about advanced technology or lost civilizations, but about the birth of symbolic thought. They look at us from across 7,000 years with those slitted, alien eyes, not to frighten, but to question. They ask us to consider that, before gods had human faces, before myths were written down, the divine, or the concept of it, may have slithered, regenerated, and watched from the reeds, a potent, ancient force shaped in humble clay by the hands of the very first city builders. The sunken city of Dwarka's mythic shore. Offshore from modern India, stone structures and artifacts suggest a settlement that aligns with the description of a legendary sunken kingdom. The waves of the Arabian Sea break against the western coast of Gujarat, India, near the modern pilgrimage town of Dwarka. For millennia, this has been sacred ground, believed by Hindus to be the ancient kingdom of Lord Krishna, a magnificent city described in sacred texts as rich with gold and precious stones. A celestial metropolis that sank beneath the ocean upon the deity's departure from the earthly realm. For centuries, this was considered pure myth, a divine allegory. Then in the late 1980s and early 2000s, marine archaeologists, diving in the Gulf of Cambay, made a series of startling discoveries. Under layers of sand and silt, they found submerged structures, massive stone blocks, pillars, and geometric formations that bore the unmistakable marks of human hands. The line between sacred legend and archaeological fact began to blur. The question now is not whether something ancient lies beneath these waters, but what exactly it is. Could these ruins be the physical counterpart to one of the world's most enduring flood myths? Or are they the remains of a prosperous, ancient port city whose existence slowly transformed into legend? I know. The mainstream anchor for this investigation is twofold: the literary and the archaeological. The primary ancient text is the Mahabharata, the great Sanskrit epic, composed roughly between 400 BCE and 400 CE. Within its verses lies a vivid description of Krishna's city of Dwarka, a fortified island city with magnificent palaces, wide roads, and bustling ports, eventually consumed by the sea. Another text, the Haravamsa, details its construction and subsequent submergence. These are not obscure references. They are central to Hindu tradition. On the archaeological side, the submerged finds are documented. The National Institute of Oceanography, IO in India, has conducted extensive sonar surveys and diving expeditions. They have identified large stone structures, including what appear to be walls, bastions, and a pier or wharf, at depths ranging from 20 to 40 meters, extending several kilometers offshore. Stone anchors, pottery shards, and other artifacts have been recovered from the site, some of which have been dated through thermoluminescence methods. The dating of these findings is the crucible of intense debate and forms the core of the mystery. Some of the artifacts, particularly pottery, have yielded dates as astonishingly early as 7,500 BCE. If validated, this would place a sophisticated stone-working maritime culture in the region thousands of years before the great Indus Valley civilization, Harappan, flourished. This claim is highly controversial within the broader archaeological community. Critics argue that the dating methods on materials recovered from a dynamic marine environment can be unreliable, and that the stone structures, while seemingly man-made, could be natural geological formations known as beach rock that fracture in rectangular patterns. The scholarly divide is stark. One side sees a discovery that could rewrite the timeline of Indian civilization, potentially proving the existence of a pre-Harappan maritime culture that inspired later myths. The other urges extreme caution, viewing the site as a likely important medieval or early historical port that has been romantically, and perhaps prematurely, linked to epic mythology. This is where a lesser-known, curious detail emerges, one that bridges the gap between the scientific and the symbolic. In 2005, archaeologists from the NIO announced the recovery from the seabed of a unique stone artifact, a pranala, or stone water chute, a specific architectural feature used in ancient stepwells and reservoirs for drainage. Its design was consistent with Harappan-era hydraulic engineering. The discovery of such a specific functional object strongly argues against the site being purely natural. It suggests planned architecture, a settlement concerned with water management, an ironic find for a city supposedly claimed by the sea. Furthermore, the layout of the underwater structures, as interpreted from sonar images, suggests a grid-like pattern, reminiscent of the planned urbanism for which the later Indus Valley cities are famous. Scholars still debate whether this submerged settlement, regardless of its exact age, represents the Dwarka of Krishna, a later Dwarka named in homage to the legend, or a completely unrelated ancient port whose catastrophic flooding simply became the myth over centuries of storytelling. The process of mythogenesis is powerful, a real historical event. A sudden rise in sea levels, a tsunami, or gradual coastal subsidence can etch itself into cultural memory and over generations become intertwined with divine narrative. The legend of a city sinking, because its god-king departed, is a poetic explanation for a real geological or climatic disaster witnessed by ancient peoples. The investigation is fraught with immense technical and environmental challenges. The waters are often turbid with silt, visibility is poor, and strong currents make detailed excavation perilous and slow. Each dive is a gamble, each recovered artifact a hard-won clue. The very forces that preserved the site, the layers of protective sediment, also hide it. Modern marine archaeology here is a painstaking process of scanning, sampling, and slowly building a picture, fragment by fragment. Yet, the cultural and emotional weight of the search is undeniable. For many, the potential discovery of Dwarka is not just an archaeological pursuit, but a validation of faith and history intertwined. It speaks to the power of stories to preserve the memory of place long after the place itself has vanished. The sunken city, whether mythic or historical, represents a universal human theme. The lost homeland, the paradise swallowed by the waves, the enduring memory of a golden age. As the research continues, the site off the coast of modern Dwarka serves as a powerful reminder that the boundary between history and legend is often a shoreline, constantly shifting with the tides of new evidence. The stone blocks on the seabed are real. The epic poems are real. The task is to understand the relationship between them. Is it a direct correlation, or a more complex dialogue between a forgotten event and an immortal story? For now, the city remains in a twilight zone, neither fully myth nor fully history, its walls silent under the wash of the sea that once may have been its thoroughfare, awaiting the next dive, the next can, the next piece of a puzzle that lies at the very heart of how a civilization remembers its own distant past. The Tartaria tablet's disputed script, 3 small clay tablets found in Romania, bear symbols that, if genuine, could represent the oldest writing system in the world. In the heart of Transylvania, not far from the lands associated with Bram Stoker's Dracula, a discovery was made in 1961 that promised to stake a different, more profound kind of claim, not to Gothic horror, but to the very origins of civilization itself. During an archaeological excavation at a Neolithic site near the village of Tartaria, 3 small fired clay tablets were unearthed. 2 were rectangular, 1 was disc-shaped. Their surfaces were incised with a series of abstract, purposeful symbols, concentric circles, parallel lines, grids, and what appeared to be stylized representations of a goat or ibex. They were found in a pit alongside clay figurines and cremated human bones, a context suggesting ritual significance. To the excavator's eyes, the symbols looked unsettlingly like a form of writing, and therein lies a controversy that has simmered for over 6 decades. Are the Tartaria tablets a smoking gun for a sophisticated prehistoric writing system in Southeast Europe, predating Mesopotamian cuneiform by over 1,000 years, or are they an elaborate archaeological mirage, a case of seeing what we desperately want to see? The mainstream anchor of this dispute is the Vinca culture, a late Neolithic to Chalcolithic society that thrived across the Balkans between 5,500 BCE. The Tartaria site is a Vinca settlement. The Vinca are known for their advanced metallurgy, organized settlements, and a wealth of symbolic artifacts, most notably a corpus of hundreds of objects marked with so-called Vinca symbols. These symbols, found on spindle whorls, figurines, and pottery, include a limited repertoire of repeating signs like crosses, chevrons, and meanders. The Tartaria tablets are considered the most complex and organized example of these symbols. The mainstream, cautious archaeological view holds that the Vinca symbols likely constitute a proto-writing system, a set of standardized marks denoting ownership, ritual status, or numerical counts, but not a true script encoding spoken language. They are seen as a precursor to writing, not writing itself. The radical claim, however, is that the Tartaria tablets break this mold. Their symbols are more densely arranged and varied. Some researchers, most notably the late archaeologist Maria Gimbutas, argued passionately that they represented a full, if rudimentary, writing system, possibly even a form of pictographic notation for a goddess-centric religion. If this interpretation were accepted, and if the tablets dating to around 5,300 BCE is correct, they would be at least 2 millennia older than the earliest accepted writing, Proto-cuneiform from Sumer, circa 3,400 BCE. This would upend the traditional cradle of civilization narrative, suggesting the spark of literacy may have flickered to life in the Balkans long before it caught fire in Mesopotamia. The controversy is fueled by several critical, lesser-known details. The first is the context of the find itself. The tablets were discovered in what was interpreted as a ritual pit, a temple area, alongside the cremated bones. This association with ritual lends weight to the idea that the symbols held sacred, communicative power. More critically, the original dating of the tablets was tied to the stratigraphic layer in which they were found. However, some scholars have since pointed out that the pit could have been a favasa, a repository for old, sacred objects, meaning the tablets could be much older than the layer that sealed them. Conversely, skeptics have raised the possibility, though never proven, that the pit was intrusive from a later period, perhaps even from the Bronze Age, which would make the tablets contemporary with other early writing systems, and thus less revolutionary. The symbols themselves are the core of the puzzle. One side sees a deliberate, structured composition. The disc-shaped tablet, for instance, is divided into quarters by inscribed lines, with different symbols in each segment, a layout that suggests systematic thought. The ibex symbol appears on multiple tablets. Proponents of the writing theory see a limited but consistent symbolic vocabulary, the hallmark of an early script. Skeptics, however, point out the lack of linear sequencing. True writing typically shows a linear flow of symbols, like a sentence. The Tartaria symbols are often clustered or compartmentalized, more like heraldic shields or property marks. Scholars still debate whether these are sacred emblems, ritual diagrams, ownership stamps for a temple, or the personal signatures of shamans. This debate ties into a subtle curiosity loop about the nature of communication itself. The Vinca symbols spread across a vast geographical area and persisted for over 1,000 years. This longevity and uniformity suggest they meant something specific and were understood by many people. But does shared symbolic meaning equate to writing? A modern stop sign is universally understood, but is not writing in the linguistic sense. The Tartaria tablets sit at this fascinating precipice between universally understood icon and language-specific script. They challenge our very definitions. Perhaps they represent a third path, a sophisticated, non-linguistic system of information storage, a kind of Neolithic ideographic code that served its culture perfectly well without needing to transcribe speech. The emotional weight of the discovery cannot be ignored, especially in the context of 20th century Eastern Europe. The claim of world's first writing carried immense nationalistic and cultural prestige. It was a chance to claim a central role in the human story, independent of the traditional Middle Eastern narrative. This political dimension has sometimes clouded the scientific discourse, with accusations of both exaggerated nationalism and dismissive Western bias flying back and forth. Today, the 3 small tablets reside in the National Museum of Romanian History in Bucharest. They are unassuming objects, easily overlooked next to glittering Dacian gold. Yet, they are giants in the world of archaeological controversy. Every few years, a new paper attempts to decipher them using comparative linguistics or statistical analysis of symbol recurrence. But a consensus remains elusive. They are a Rorschach test for archaeologists. Some see the birth of writing, others see elaborate ritual paraphernalia. In the quiet of the museum case, the Tartaria tablets continue their silent transmission. They are a message, unquestionably, but is it a message to us or a message to gods? Is it an inventory, a prayer, or a diagram of the cosmos? Their power lies in their ambiguity. They represent humanity's relentless drive to make a mark, to record, to communicate beyond the moment. Whether they are the first chapter of the story of writing or a fascinating, elaborate dead end in the history of symbols, they compel us to look deeper into the Neolithic mind. They remind us that long before words were written on clay, ideas were being carved with equal purpose, and the line between a symbol and a letter is one of the most profound boundaries in human history. A boundary the Tartaria tablets straddle with enigmatic poise. The Dendera zodiac sky map, a carved ceiling in an Egyptian temple, presents a unique and controversially dated snapshot of the ancient night sky. High in the chapel atop the roof of the Temple of Hathor at Dendera, a stifling, windowless room holds a stone secret that has divided astronomers, archaeologists, and historians for 2 centuries. Here, removed from the temple's main halls and accessible only by a narrow staircase, a sprawling, circular bas-relief is carved into the sandstone ceiling. It is the Dendera zodiac, a breathtaking, intricate map of the heavens depicting the constellations, not as abstract dots, but as the familiar gods, animals, and objects of Egyptian and Greco-Roman iconography. A bull for Taurus, a pair of fish for Pisces, a water pourer for Aquarius. But nestled among these classic zodiacal figures are distinctively Egyptian symbols: a falcon-headed Horus, a goddess in a boat, a standing hippopotamus. This magnificent fusion is more than just art. It is a sophisticated astronomical document. Yet from the moment it was first studied by Napoleon savants in the 1790s, it has been the center of a fiery debate. The question is not what it shows, but when it was meant to show it. Does this ceiling capture the night sky as it appeared in the age of the pharaohs? Or is it a later, Hellenistic creation? And what happens to history if we read its stars incorrectly? The mainstream anchor is the Temple of Hathor itself, a magnificent Ptolemaic-era structure whose construction began around 125 BCE and continued into the Roman period. The Ptolemies were Greek rulers of Egypt, following Alexander the Great's conquest, and their era was one of profound cultural syncretism, Greek ideas blended with ancient Egyptian traditions. The temple is undeniably from this period. The zodiac ceiling is located in a pronaos, outer hall, added by the Roman Emperor Tiberius around 15 CE. This architectural context strongly suggests a 1st century CE date for the carving. Most Egyptologists accept this, viewing the zodiac as a beautiful product of its time. A Greco-Roman astrological motif, the zodiac is Mesopotamian in origin, transmitted through the Greeks, adapted to Egyptian stylistic and theological conventions. It is seen as a decorative and symbolic ceiling, not necessarily a precise astronomical chart, but the controversy arises from a literal astronomical reading of the map. The central disk of the zodiac shows the northern constellations, including the Little Bear, Draco, and the Pole Star. The outer ring shows the 36 Egyptian decans, star groups used for telling time at night, and the classical zodiac signs. Because the Earth's axis slowly wobbles over a 26,000-year cycle, precession, the position of the equinoxes relative to the constellations shifts over centuries. If one assumes the Dendera zodiac is meant to be an accurate snapshot of the sky, the position of the equinox, points among the zodiac signs, can be used to calculate a date. Early 19th century astronomers, like Joseph Fourier and Jean-Baptiste Biot, did just that. Some of their calculations, based on the position of the vernal equinox and the constellation of Taurus, pointed to dates as remote as 4000 BCE, or even earlier, millennia before the temple was built. This leads to the curious, fringe-adjacent theory that has swirled around the zodiac since its discovery, that it is a copy of a far older map, preserving astronomical knowledge from a lost, high civilization of deep antiquity. This idea was championed by some French intellectuals post-Napoleon, and later by various alternative history writers. They argued the Ptolemaic priests were merely the last custodians of archaic sky lore, carving ancient wisdom into a new temple stone. The theory hinges on the presence of the distinct Egyptian constellations, like the hippopotamus, representing the northern sky, and then the falcon on a serpent, which are not part of the Greco-Babylonian zodiac. Could these be surviving fragments of a pristine pharaonic astronomy? Modern scholarship, however, has largely dismantled the extreme antiquity claim through a more nuanced understanding of the artifact. The mainstream consensus is that the zodiac is a schematic, not a photograph. It mixes symbols from different astronomical traditions for theological and decorative purposes. The deity it encodes might be mythological or symbolic, not historical. For instance, the equinox positioned in Taurus could reference a mythical first time, Zep Tepi, the golden age of the gods, not a literal historical epoch. Scholars still debate whether the arrangement has any precise observational basis at all, or if it is a purely symbolic representation of the cosmic order, as understood by the temple's priesthood in the 1st century CE. One lesser-known, fascinating detail adds depth to the mystery. In 1922, the original ceiling was carefully sawn out of the temple and shipped to Paris, where it now resides in the Louvre. A concrete replica sits in its place at Dendera. This physical translocation is symbolic of the zodiac's own displaced meaning. Furthermore, close study reveals errors or unique conflations, like the figure for Libra, depicted not as scales, but as a man holding scales, a style that became standard only later in the Roman period. This supports its late date, yet the skill and complexity of the chart are undeniable. It demonstrates a masterful synthesis of two worldviews, an attempt to create a unified cosmic diagram that satisfied both the traditional Egyptian cult of Hathor and the Hellenistic fascination with astrology. The Dendera zodiac, therefore, is a different kind of ancient mystery. It is not a puzzle of forgotten purpose or lost technology, but a puzzle of interpretation and transmission. It forces us to ask, how did ancient cultures preserve knowledge? Could a design maintain an accurate astronomical meaning across thousands of years of copying? Or does each generation inevitably reshape the past to fit its own understanding? The temple ceiling is a palimpsest of the sky, with layers of meaning from different eras fused into one breathtaking image. Today, under the cool lights of the Louvre, visitors gaze up at the massive stone disc. It is no longer in the dark room for which it was intended, where perhaps only initiates witnessed its glory by a flickering torchlight. Its removal from its sacred architectural context mirrors our own struggle to understand it outside of its cultural context. We see the stars, but we may have lost the story that connected them. The Dendera zodiac endures not as a time machine to 10,000 BCE, but as a timeless testament to humanity's urge to look up, find patterns in the chaos of stars, and carve our stories, our gods and our time into the very fabric of what we believe to be eternal. It is a map, yes, but perhaps its true destination was never a date in history, but a state of wonder. The Teotihuacan Pyramid's liquid mercury, deep beneath a Mexican pyramid, archaeologists discovered a substance that was both sacred and extraordinarily rare in the ancient world. The Avenue of the Dead cuts a stark, geometric line through the ruins of Teotihuacan, the vast, pre-Aztec metropolis that dominated central Mexico nearly 2,000 years ago. At its northern terminus looms the colossal Pyramid of the Moon, a structure of terrifying symmetry and imposing presence. But it is beneath its southern counterpart, the slightly larger Pyramid of the Sun, and more recently under the smaller ornate Temple of the Feathered Serpent, that a discovery was made that seems to bleed from the pages of alchemy into the realm of archaeology. During exploratory tunnel projects in the 1970s and again in the 2010s, archaeologists working deep in the clammy, pitch-black subsoil made a find that defied expectation: significant quantities of liquid mercury. Not as a trace element, but as pools and droplets of the shimmering toxic metal, sealed in chambers untouched for centuries. In a culture that left no deciphered written records, whose very name is lost, Teotihuacan is an Aztec word, meaning the city of the gods. This mercury presents a cryptic clue. What was this rare, dangerous, and mesmerizing substance doing in the sacred underworld of a pyramid? And what does it reveal about the shadowy beliefs of Mesoamerica's first great city? The mainstream anchor is Teotihuacan itself. At its zenith between 100 and 550 CE, it was one of the largest cities in the world, with a population exceeding 125,000. Its grid plan, its monumental architecture, the pyramids of the sun and moon and the temple of the feathered serpent, and its vivid, chaotic murals point to a complex theocratic society. Yet, its origins, the language of its people, and the reasons for its sudden collapse around 550 CE remain profound mysteries. The discovery of mercury is a hard scientific fact within this enigmatic context. The largest cache was found in 2015, in a chamber at the end of a tunnel nearly 60 feet beneath the temple of the feathered serpent. This tunnel, believed to represent a sacred conduit to the underworld, also contained a trove of other ritual objects: jade statues, pyrite mirrors, carved shells, and the skeletons of big cats and birds of prey. The mercury was placed there deliberately, as part of an elaborate, costly, and profoundly symbolic offering. The practical questions are immediate. Where did they get it? Mercury, in its liquid form, quicksilver, occurs rarely in nature, usually as droplets within cinnabar, a brilliant red mercury sulfide ore. Cinnabar mines were known to the Teotihuacanos, most notably at places like Huancavelica, hundreds of miles away. The process of extracting liquid mercury from cinnabar requires sophisticated pyrotechnology, heating the ore in a furnace to release mercury vapor, which then condenses. The Teotihuacanos were masterful metallurgists and chemists. They used cinnabar extensively as a sacred red pigment, dusting it on corpses and offerings. But to produce and transport liquid mercury in quantity was a technological feat of another order, speaking to immense resources and specialized knowledge. This leads to the core of the mystery. Why? Mercury has no practical use in a pre-industrial society for tools or weapons. Its value was purely symbolic and ritual. Scholars point to several compelling theories. Its liquid, shimmering, mirror-like quality made it a powerful symbol of water, specifically the waters of the underworld, a sacred, dangerous realm. A pool of mercury in a dark chamber would reflect torchlight in an uncanny, animate way, creating a disorienting, supernatural effect for priests during rituals. Furthermore, across Mesoamerica, mirrors made of pyrite or obsidian were considered portals to other realms, tools for divination. Liquid mercury could be seen as the ultimate fluid mirror, a conduit to the spirit world. Some researchers have even suggested it represented a sacred river or lake in the mythological landscape of the underworld, akin to the mercury rivers said to flow in the tomb of China's first emperor, a fascinating parallel on the other side of the globe. A lesser-known curious detail involves the tunnel system itself. The tunnel under the temple of the feathered serpent is a masterpiece of ancient engineering, cut through rock and stabilized with precise architecture. It was not a mine. It was a constructed pathway, sealed for over 1,500 years. The discovery of the mercury was not accidental. Archaeologists, led by Sergio Gomez, followed the tunnel for years, painstakingly removing hundreds of tons of earth and rubble, deliberately placed by the Teotihuacanos themselves as a final sealing act. The mercury was found in the final chamber, the tunnel's terminus, indicating it was the climax of the offering, the most potent substance placed at the deepest, most sacred point. This contextualizes it not as a random deposit, but as the core of a deeply layered ritual performance meant to appease or commune with chthonic forces. Scholars still debate whether the mercury also had a more specific astronomically aligned function. The tunnel under the Pyramid of the Sun, where mercury was also detected, is aligned with a point on the horizon where the sun sets on certain significant days of the year. Could the reflective mercury have been used to catch and redirect beams of sunlight deep into the earth during these solar events, creating a spectacular light ritual? It's a tantalizing, though unproven, possibility that marries the city's known astronomical precision with its subterranean obsessions. The presence of this toxic metal also adds a darker shade to our understanding of Teotihuacan's priesthood. Handling liquid mercury exposes one to lethal vapors. The priests who performed these rituals likely suffered from mercury poisoning, which causes neurological damage, tremors, and madness. This could have been interpreted not as illness, but as a form of divine possession or the cost of accessing forbidden knowledge. The priesthood may have been a class literally intoxicated by their communion with the underworld, their physical degradation a mark of their sacred office. Today, the tunnels remain largely sealed, the chambers protected. The mercury, where it hasn't been carefully removed for study, likely still pools in the darkness. It serves as a potent reminder that Teotihuacan's power was not just architectural, but deeply alchemical. The city manipulated materials and minds with equal prowess. The liquid mercury is a key, but to a lock we are still learning to pick. It doesn't tell us the name of the city's king or the words of its prayers, but it speaks volumes about the lengths to which its people would go to bridge the world of the living and the dead. It reveals a civilization that sought to capture the essence of movement, light, and danger in a metal that defies solidity, and to bury that captured magic at the heart of their world, a shimmering, poisonous secret meant to last until the end of time. The Rongorongo script's last whisper. On Easter Island, beyond the famous statues, wooden texts inscribed with an undeciphered script hold the unreadable history of a lost culture. The wind that whips across the grassy slopes of Rapa Nui, known to the world as Easter Island, is a lonely voice. It whistles past the hollow eye sockets of the Moai, the towering stone giants that stand sentinel over a shattered paradise. These statues have come to symbolize the island's mystery. A society that achieved the impossible, then collapsed into tragedy. But there exists another, more intimate, and equally profound mystery, one not carved in volcanic tuff, but inscribed on dark, worn wood. It is the mystery of Rongorongo, a unique system of glyphs, a potential script, found on a handful of surviving wooden tablets, staffs, and a pectoral ornament. Discovered not by archaeologists in a controlled dig, but by a Catholic missionary in the 1860s, who found them in the possession of islanders and promptly condemned them as pagan idols. These texts are the last whispers of Rapa Nui's pre-contact soul. The haunting question is not only what they say, but whether we will ever learn to hear them, or if the language they encode has fallen silent forever. The mainstream anchor for this enigma is the tragic and well-documented history of Rapa Nui's discovery and subsequent devastation. The island was first encountered by Europeans on Easter Sunday, 1722. Subsequent visits by explorers, whalers, and slavers in the 18th and early 19th centuries introduced disease and violence. The crowning catastrophe was the Peruvian slave raid of 1862 to 63, which kidnapped or killed around half the remaining population, including, critically, the island's learned class, the Maori, or sages, who could read the glyphs. By the time the well-meaning but culturally devastating missionary, Brother Eugène Hérode, arrived in 1864 and reported the existence of the inscribed tablets, the chain of transmission had already been brutally severed. The texts were already relics of a dying knowledge. Today, only about 24 authentic Rongorongo artifacts survive in museums worldwide, each covered in rows of finely carved, fluid glyphs depicting stylized humans, animals, plants, and geometric forms. The glyphs themselves are the core of the puzzle. They are not mere pictographs. They exhibit features of a true script. The characters are arranged in a consistent, systematic order using a method called reverse boustrophedon. The reader starts at the bottom left of a tablet, reads a line from left to right, then physically rotates the tablet 180 degrees to read the next line, which continues in the same direction relative to the reader. This sophisticated layout strongly suggests a structured writing system for recording language. The glyphs show repetition and variation, hinting at a phonetic or syllabic component. Some appear to be compound, made of smaller elements. To the trained eye of a linguist, it looks like writing. But without a living speaker of the ancient Rapa Nui language, modern Rapa Nui is a Polynesian language. But the older liturgical tongue may have differed, and without a bilingual Rosetta Stone, decipherment has been an exercise in profound frustration. This leads to the lesser-known, curious detail that offers a glimmer of hope and deepens the tragedy. In the late 19th century, a handful of elderly islanders, survivors of the Old World, were interviewed about the tablets. They recognized the objects as sacred, tapu, and called them kohau rongorongo, which translates roughly as lines for recitation, or chanting staves. They explained that the Maori would chant or recite the texts during ceremonies, tracing the glyphs with their fingers. This confirms their function as mnemonic devices for reciting genealogies, cosmogonic chants, creation myths, or agricultural calendars, the vital lore of the culture. However, when asked to read specific tablets, the informants could not. The knowledge was not merely forgotten. It had been systematically exterminated with the last trained readers. Scholars still debate whether Rongorongo was an indigenous invention, which would make it one of the few independent inventions of writing in human history. Or, if the concept of writing was inspired by a fleeting, catastrophic glimpse of Spanish writing during the 1770 visit, and then developed in unique isolation. The former possibility hints at an even more sophisticated and independent intellectual tradition than the statues alone suggest. The quest for decipherment is a graveyard of ambitious but failed theories. Some attempts have tried to link the glyphs to the island's famous rock art or to other Polynesian symbolic systems, with little success. Others have employed statistical analysis to identify potential grammatical structures. A few glyphs seem transparent, a glyph for a frigate bird, a fish, a crescent palm, but the vast majority remains stubbornly opaque. The script's very isolation is its curse. Unlike Egyptian hieroglyphs, which survived in a cultural continuum and were unlocked by the Rosetta Stone's Greek translation, Rongorongo has no such key. It is a locked door for which the only key was melted down. Yet, the texts persist, their very existence a defiant statement. They prove that the people of Rapa Nui were not just brilliant engineers and sculptors, but also intellectuals who sought to fix their history and beliefs in a permanent form. They moved beyond oral tradition to create a written one, perhaps in a desperate bid for permanence as their world began to crumble from ecological strain and internal conflict. The smooth wood of the tablets, often fashioned from driftwood or the rare Toramiro tree, feels intimate compared to the monumental stone moai. This was a knowledge meant to be held, studied, and chanted, connecting the speaker directly to the ancestors whose forms are carved beside the words. In a quiet storage room of the Museo Antropologico Padre Sebastian Englert on Rapa Nui, one of the precious few remaining tablets lies in controlled darkness. Its glyphs, once traced by the fingers of a chanting priest, are now scanned and digitized, pored over by linguists using algorithms instead of oral tradition. The effort continues, a testament to our refusal to let this whisper die completely. The Rongorongo script is the most poignant of ancient mysteries. It is not a hidden chamber or a strange material, but a lost conversation. We have the paper, but the language is gone. The wind on Easter Island carries the echo of those chants, a history written in a beautiful, forgotten hand, challenging us to listen, to learn, and to remember that some silences are not empty, but full of words we can no longer understand. Conclusion: our journey through these 10 enigmas has not been a path to answers, but a map of the vast and haunting terrain of the unanswered. From the geoscanned voids within the Great Pyramid to the toxic mercury deep under Teotihuacan, from the cosmic map of the Kokno Stone to the whispering glyphs of Rongorongo, we have traversed continents and millennia. What unites these mysteries is not a thread of conspiracy, but a testament to the boundless complexity of the human past. They remind us that history is not a tidy ledger of known facts, but a sprawling, fragmented manuscript, with most of its pages lost, faded, or written in languages we have forgotten how to read. These ancient puzzles pull us forward, not because they promise simple solutions, but because they guard their secrets so well. They defy the arrogance of assuming we understand the full scope of human ingenuity, belief, and experience. The first emperor's tomb mocks our technological prowess with its simple, poisonous barrier. The Ubaid figurines confront us with a symbolic language so foreign it reshapes our imagination of early spirituality. Each mystery is a humbling reminder that the past is another country, and we are but partial tourists, deciphering scant phrases from a lost guidebook. In the end, these enduring questions do more than puzzle archaeologists. They fuel the essential human drive to wonder. They connect us, across the abyss of time, to those who also looked at the stars, carved stone, sought the divine, and tried to leave a mark that said, "We were here." The mysteries are their legacy and our compass, ensuring that the conversation between the past and the present never truly ends, and that the pursuit of understanding remains one of our most noble and endlessly fascinating endeavors.